In the chill of a 1943 winter night, Nikola Tesla passed away by himself in room 3327 at the New Yorker Hotel. The genius who lit up the contemporary era ended his days in a once grand Manhattan skyscraper that had boasted being the planet's highest hotel. His remains went unnoticed for a full day, shielded by a, quote, zero notice. Staff discovered him only later, positioned neatly on the bed, with hands clasped, just as he had set them. FBI agents showed up soon after to confiscate his documents. Meanwhile, the hotel kept running smoothly, unaffected by the event. This tale revolves around a structure that vowed enduring stability, yet provided a far different reality. A grand edifice, born in an age of extravagance, weathered by economic hardship and conflict, and ultimately serving as a haven for the needy and unusual. To grasp Tesla's passing, one must first comprehend the hotel's own history, which didn't even begin until 1929. During the 1920s, New York City chased an endless upward battle with its architecture. Skyscrapers grew taller each year. Iron skeletons reached new heights. Builders vied for fleeting records that soon lost their shine. The city's outline shifted non-stop, with laborers enduring cold seasons to stack levels that claimed the quote, _1 crown momentarily before rivals overtook them. Hotels joined this frenzy with extra fervor. The era witnessed a surge in accommodations as developers realized the growing need for places to stay amid a booming global trade hub, drawing business folk and sightseers. The Hotel McAlpin debuted in 1912, boasting 1,500 rooms. The Hotel Pennsylvania came next in 1919, with 2,200. Both held the title of world's biggest, until successors eclipsed them. The surge made financial sense. Though Prohibition kicked off in 1920, Manhattan stayed America's nightlife epicenter. Broadway shows packed houses nightly. Jazz spots thrived in hidden speakeasies below ground. Affluent guests rolled in via trains at Pennsylvania Station, seeking nearby lodgings. Corporate gatherings booked out entire hotels for extended periods. The appetite for rooms appeared boundless. Builders took on massive debts to finance their ventures. Lenders raced to back schemes offering reliable income from nightly fees and dining profits. The numbers added up promisingly. A 2,000-room property at $3 a night could cover building costs in about 10 years, leaving pure earnings afterward. Matt Canner spotted the potential sharp and clear. A seasoned constructor who had amassed wealth through erecting residential towers and office spaces across Manhattan. He started acquiring lots along 8th Avenue from 34th to 35th Streets in 1927. The spot held key benefits. Just 2 blocks north lay Pennsylvania Station. The garment area encircled it, funneling crowds of employees and shoppers each day. The property cost a premium but stood ready for purchase. Canner engaged architects Sugarman and Berger, experts in major business edifices who aimed to pioneer something revolutionary. They enlisted Ralph T. Walker as design consultant. Walker, fresh from crafting the New York Telephone Company headquarters in a bold Art Deco mode that blended cutting-edge techniques with ornate touches for unique flair, would define the New Yorker's outer look. Plans envisioned 43 levels springing from a footprint spanning the whole block. The upper section would house 2,500 rooms, outdoing the Hotel Pennsylvania to claim the globe's most spacious hotel. Even better, at 512 feet from sidewalk to summit, it would stand as Earth's loftiest hotel building. Such stature signaled bold vision and forward thinking in a metropolis where those traits equaled wealth. Walker clad the facade in brick, accented by Art Deco details clustered at the top. Terracotta accents featured abstract eagles and angular motifs. The upright lines pulled gazes skyward to the stepped-back tiers on higher levels, mandated by city regulations. From afar, Whether by rail or cab, the structure would shine as a landmark for arrivals. Groundbreaking hit in 1928. First came tearing down old structures, followed by digging deep. Teams hauled away rubble all summer long. Come autumn, they laid concrete bases strong enough for immense loads. Erecting a 43-story behemoth called for exacting structural work. With the groundwork solid, the metal skeleton shot up swiftly as workers layered stories so quickly that onlookers from nearby sites marveled. The inside layouts outshone the shell in scope. All guest spaces included ensuite baths, a rarity in 1928 when communal options dominated many inns. Plus, each would come fitted with its own radio, a cutting-edge perk beyond most rivals' reach. Guests in every room could access chilled water straight from the faucet, delivered via an advanced central cooling setup that showcased cutting-edge mechanical design. To block out noise from adjacent spaces, walls featured cork and mineral wool barriers, keeping sounds from neighboring occupants inaudible. The property included several dining venues, spacious halls for conferences and gatherings, grooming salons for men and women, a dedicated medical level complete with surgical suites, and even a lower-level print shop for creating in-house menus and marketing items. Conceived as a standalone enclave, a towering urban hub, visitors might check in and handle all needs without ever stepping outside. Conair had arranged funding via an intricate web of loans and securities. The project's overall expense neared $23 million. A staggering figure, underscoring the vast size and premium fixtures being incorporated. Backers anticipated gains from accommodations, eatery sales, and storefront rentals at street level. Projections indicated profitability in about 10 years. Come the start of 1929, the skeletal framework stood finished. Throughout spring and summer, crews fitted the glass panes, while higher levels got their outer shells. Finishing touches started on the base stories. The timeline pressed hard. Conair aimed for a pre-year-end debut to snag the peak winter influx, when events packed the city's lodgings. Then, October 1929 hit. The booming stock exchange of the Roaring Twenties started wobbling. Shares plunged on the 24th in a steep fall. Frenzied sell-off snowballed in the days after. The full collapse struck by the 29th. Trillions in illusory fortunes dissolved. Lenders backing property developments grappled with waves of bad debts. The prosperity spurt that had driven such builds vanished in a flash. Undeterred, Canna pressed on. With the New Yorker so advanced, halting made no sense. Work persisted into autumn. By month's end in December, completion loomed. Launch set for January 2nd, 1930. The juncture proved disastrous, yet inevitable. A half-built tower earned nothing. One operational at least offered possibilities. Crowds turned out for the lavish debut, undimmed by the mounting financial dread gripping the streets. Patrons joined a celebratory banquet and facility walkthroughs. Bands filled the dance floors. Journalists inspected the tech setups and gawked at the endless cold water supply. In-room radios wowed those who viewed airwaves as fresh wonders. The edifice embodied the pinnacle of contemporary ingenuity. At 512 feet, it claimed the title of world's highest hotel upon unveiling. That status, held for some time. Yet in early 1930, with joblessness surging and shops shuttering all over Manhattan, the milestone rang empty. The New Yorker bowed at history's bleakest instant. Initial quarters challenged Conair's forecasts. Stay rates lagged behind estimates. Event reservations dwindled as firms slashed trip spending. Dining income dipped with slimmer on-site crowds. The downturn struck fast and fierce, hitting hospitality early and hard. Still, the New Yorker weathered the storm via its prestige and prime spot. Fresh, soaring, and sleek, it drew those still able to splurge on city stays as the ultimate fresh luxury. Its novelties sparked interest. Room radios turned into a unique promo hook, no rival boasted. Solo baths and faucet ice water signaled indulgence worth the premium pricing. As 1930 closed, the New Yorker Hotel symbolized bold vision clashing with rotten luck, the loftiest inn in a metropolis where endurance trumped stature. The dawn of the 30s scrutinized every financial premise Conair held about the trade. Pricing fell amid fiercer rivalry for occupants. Discounts proliferated in Manhattan's inns, eroding earnings. The New Yorker held firmer tariffs than peers, backed by its up-to-date perks, though usage stayed under targets. Vacant chambers brought zero cash flow, no matter the street view spectacle. Staff countered with bold promotion. They highlighted standout features in print campaigns across dailies and periodicals. Faucet-chilled water earned nods in tour books. Solo facilities, rare in legacy spots, edged out rivals for discerning clientele who could pick and choose. Meeting traffic offered a steady anchor. Industry groups and expert bodies pressed on with yearly assemblies. Depression be damned. Large event spaces, equipped with ballrooms and dining areas that could serve hundreds of people, were essential for such groups. The New Yorker's expansive layout proved advantageous in this regard, allowing it to host functions that smaller establishments simply couldn't accept. Gatherings from engineering conferences, medical societies, and corporate networks reserved areas for extended events which packed both accommodations and eateries at the same time. Additionally, the hotel gained from its ties to radio transmissions. NBC set up studios within the property soon after it launched. This setup drew entertainers and engineers to the site on a frequent basis. Broadcasts aired live from the New Yorker, offering the hotel invaluable exposure that no amount of cash could purchase. Audiences nationwide tuned in to hear hosts note that they were sending signals from the New Yorker Hotel in New York City. Linking to cutting-edge tech bolstered the structure's reputation as an emblem of advancement. The internal systems were truly state-of-the-art. A central chilling unit delivered cold water to 253 guest rooms, showcasing engineering feats rarely seen on such a grand scale. Heating and air conditioning setups incorporated fresh ideas that rendered the hotel more pleasant than its aging rivals. The power setup managed the needs of broadcasts, illumination, and automated equipment across a 43-story skyscraper without the breakdowns common in pre-electricity structures. Yet progress demanded upkeep. Intricate machinery required ongoing care from expert workers. The cooling facility gobbled up massive quantities of power. Boilers, warming the place in cold months, fueled themselves with coal delivered by vehicles and stockpiled in underground vaults. Expenses for running the operation stayed steep, even as income dropped. Cutting personnel helped curb outlays, but a facility of this magnitude required baseline staff numbers no matter the guest load. In 1931, Conair restructured the hotel's financing. The initial loan terms had projected occupancy and pricing levels that reality had shattered. Lenders with the deeds grappled with their own troubles as foreclosures rippled through their property holdings. Talks dragged on. The final deal offered Conair some relief, though it came at a price. Rates on interest climbed. Oversight moved in part to lenders. The New Yorker now weighed heavily on all parties. Still, it drew prominent visitors. Stars visiting the city frequently picked the New Yorker for its blend of contemporary opulence and prime spot. Officials in town for Manhattan occasions reserved stays there. Travelers from Europe docking at Hudson River terminals deemed the hotel handy and striking. The register featured figures who made frequent headlines. The 1933 swearing-in of Franklin Roosevelt sparked fresh hope. The New Deal vowed federal action to steady the economy. Financial institutions resumed operations. Job initiatives launched. The acute crisis eased, despite full rebound staying far off. Places like the New Yorker endured these years thanks to durability and minor edges. Its standing played a role. Recent enough to seem fresh, yet seasoned enough to solidify its position prior to the Depression's peak. The mid-1930s saw slow progress. Fill rates edged up a bit. Pricing for rooms held firm. Event reservations stayed consistent. The New Yorker wasn't booming, but foreclosure loomed less urgently. Leaders upheld quality to remain in the game. Entrances gleamed with polish. Eateries offered solid cuisine. Equipment ran smoothly. Patrons got what they deserved. The hotel also housed a new type of occupant. Extended-stay visitors started settling into higher-level suites. These weren't short-term sightseers or executives on brief trips. Instead, they sought ongoing lodging and opted for hotel living over leasing flats. Many were seniors. Some were experts on the move who valued on-site amenities over home upkeep. A handful were quirky types with funds for such a lifestyle, but short on cash for city real estate. The New Yorker catered to these steady dwellers via special deals well under the standard transient fees. A space charging $4 nightly to passers-by could lease for $60 monthly under a prolonged contract. This setup aided everyone. Dwellers secured reliable quarters plus meal access and support. The hotel occupied otherwise vacant units and secured reliable payments, unaffected by visitor peaks and valleys. This hybrid role, as both a temporary lodging and a permanent residence, shaped the New Yorker's identity for many years to come. Its vast size allowed it to accommodate these two groups seamlessly, avoiding any clashes. Long-term occupants settled into the upper levels, insulated from the steady influx of brief visitors. Separate elevators and exclusive dining areas were reserved, just for those residents. The setup succeeded thanks to the structure's built-in surplus space, which the economic downturn had turned into a lasting feature. By 1935, the New Yorker Hotel had endured half a decade of financial turmoil. It hadn't thrived, and Kinnair hadn't seen the returns he'd anticipated, back when building started in '28. Yet the edifice endured. Its rooms stayed filled. The eateries kept dishing out food. The engineering backbone hummed along. In an era that wiped out countless enterprises and left structures vacant all over Manhattan, just hanging on counted as a victory. The hotel's image had shifted too. It was no longer the freshest or trendiest spot. Affluent visitors might opt for the Waldorf Astoria or the Plaza due to their ties to high society. But in the '30s, the New Yorker delivered something rarer. Dependable standards at affordable rates. The features that felt lavish in '30 had turned into everyday expectations by then. In-room radios weren't a big deal anymore. Private baths were turning up in all the latest builds. On-demand chilled water was a nice touch, not a wonder. The New Yorker's real strengths lay in its sturdy build, prime spot, and sheer magnitude, which kept it afloat financially, even at partial occupancy. It could run at 60% full and still break even. Lesser hotels couldn't manage that. They needed to be packed to stay alive. What had once appeared as overkill in size during construction now proved its saving grace amid the slump. Vacant spaces on the 40th floor didn't stop service for folks on the 10th. The place was simply too immense to collapse entirely. As the late 1930s arrived, the New Yorker Hotel finally gained a steadiness it hadn't enjoyed since its debut. Room bookings rose past 70%. Event reservations packed the schedule in busy times. The Depression's grip was easing. Even if full rebound lagged, the hotel had ridden out the storm by relying on its position, dimensions, and edge of being a tad more modern than the grand old rivals. The guest logs from those days resemble a who's who of U.S. success and stardom. Lawmakers picked the New Yorker during Manhattan visits. Senators and representatives favored it for blending privacy with top-notch care. Its scale let notable guests navigate the public areas without endless spotlight, while its nearness to Penn Station made trips to Washington straightforward. Showbiz types selected it for the same perks. Stage actors crashed there between performances. Bands playing at Radio City Music Hall or Carnegie Hall reserved stays for long gigs. The on-site NBC facilities drew radio stars often. Bob Hope was a regular. Benny Goodman, too. It turned into a hub for artists seeking easy reach to midtown stages, minus the rigid vibe of antique hotels. Sports figures caught on during this time. Ball clubs coming to face the Yankees or Giants typically quartered their rosters there. The accommodations were cozy. The food halls could manage group feasts. The spot offered quick trips to the ballparks. Joe DiMaggio bunked at the New Yorker in his early days. So did out-of-town athletes who'd eventually enter the Hall of Fame. The crew grew used to spotting celebs in the lifts and eateries. Beyond the radio setups, the building spotlighted tech advances in other ways. In 1936, RCA showcased prototype TV gear right there. Techs rigged trial setups in a ballroom and beamed sample feeds to screens scattered about. It pulled in specialists, backers, and reporters, eager for a peek at broadcasting's next phase. TV was still far from market-ready. Still, the New Yorker had carved out a role as a testing ground for such trials. Its utility systems kept wowing those in the know about mechanics. The central chilled water setup stayed novel enough for industry mags to profile its operations. Down in the sublevel, the cooling unit generated icy liquid that flowed via conduits to all levels. Patrons just twisted the _2_valve for refreshingly cold flow, skipping any need for extra cubes. Although it guzzled vast amounts of power, the setup ensured steady cooling throughout all the 253 guest rooms. Equally advanced were the ventilation mechanisms. From the outset, the New Yorker incorporated thoughtful airflow design. Outside air flowed in via rooftop inlets, getting filtered and treated in specialized units before being routed across the structure through hidden ducts in the walls and overhead. Outflow openings cleared out stuffy atmosphere and cooking smells from the kitchens. While it fell short of today's full-fledged air conditioning, this approach outshone the common practice of cracked windows paired with whirring fans in hot weather for most structures. Upholding top-notch service was key, as leaders knew their standing hinged on dependable performance. The eatery offered dishes on par with standalone eateries nearby. Seasoned chefs in the preparation areas whipped up large volumes of meals that would overwhelm modest venues. On an average night, around 800 suppers might be dished out in various eating spaces. The operation ran a centralized provisioning setup with supplies trucked in wholesale, prepped, and stashed in underground storage, then shuttled to the cooking zones on demand. Such streamlined processes controlled expenses on provisions without skimping on standards. Running this level of hospitality demanded a workforce in the hundreds. Daily room refreshers by cleaning staff kept spaces spotless. Porters hauled bags and handled odd jobs. Reception personnel managed arrivals and departures non-stop. The phone board featured operators working shifts to route connections and handle wake-up requests. Repair crews fixed leaks, swapped out bulbs, and ensured all equipment hummed along. Essentially, the place operated like a compact metropolis, needing round-the-clock care from a legion of staffers who got little acclaim aside from their salaries. Tensions between labor and bosses in the hospitality sector were commonplace. Employees endured extended shifts for basic pay. By the mid-1930s, New Yorker workers had unionized, aligning with groups advocating for hotel staff citywide. Executives bargained deals setting baseline wages and job protocols, Walkouts loomed but were mostly sidestepped. The establishment relied on its crew, and the crew on steady work. Everyone acknowledged the shared reliance that rendered all-out disputes unwise. Long-term occupants in the top levels created their own tight-knit group inside the hotel. A number had resided there from the early 1930s onward. They'd observed the shift from a shaky startup to a solid venture. Plenty were seniors opting for the ease of hotel routine over fussing with home upkeep. Some were career folks whose schedules involved lots of on-the-road time. A handful just favored this setup over everyday home life. These dwellers built bonds with the team that went beyond ordinary visitor exchanges. They were on a first-name basis, with desk attendants. They claimed preferred spots for meals. They got priority on service calls. In exchange, they delivered reliable ongoing income and seldom stirred trouble. Leaders appreciated them as steady presences, filling the higher stories, buffering against dips in visitor traffic. The New Yorker also sheltered a more discreet crowd. Its scale allowed folks to blend into the background. Certain upper-level suites housed guests settling up in cash with aliases that didn't always align with their papers. As long as payments cleared, the staff inquired little. This low-profile policy drew in those seeking to stay off radars. Some prized privacy alone. Others required it for particular reasons. Come 1939, the New Yorker Hotel had solidified its identity. It didn't claim the elite status in Manhattan. That went to spots like the Waldorf Astoria and the Plaza. Nor was it the latest addition. At almost 10 years in, it seemed outdated in a town forever tearing down and raising anew. Yet, the New Yorker had carved out its niche as a dependable mid-tier option, blending up-to-date comforts, prime positioning, and fair pricing. It suited lawmakers bunking there, sans the need to dazzle voters. Ballplayers crashed in its rooms for solid ease, minus the hoopla. Executives picked it when budgets counted. The property had endured its ill-timed debut. It rode out the economic slump. It adjusted to fiscal pressures that sank rivals. The bells and whistles once deemed lavish in 1930 now ranked as must-haves for visitors. No longer did in-room radios set it apart. It stood as a solid, trustworthy spot in an urban landscape where dependability trumped showiness. Finances had evened out, though never hitting the windfall profits first envisioned. Kinnair and his backers had reworked funding deals several times. Ownership shifted somewhat to lenders, yet the property produced enough income to handle its daily expenses and loan obligations. Vacant spaces on the 40th floor ceased to signal disaster. Instead, they stood as untapped potential, ready to be occupied once guest numbers rebounded. Another transformation loomed on the horizon. The outbreak of war reached the New Yorker Hotel on December 7, 1941. That afternoon, visitors clustered in the entrances and eateries, tuning into radio reports about the assault on Pearl Harbor. As night fell, the truth sank in. America was joining World War II. This shift would upend all aspects of life, disrupting the steady routines that had taken hold in the late 1930s. The first effect hit bookings hard. Within days, military leaders started pouring into Manhattan. The War Department required housing for staff handling command centers, supply chains, and purchasing hubs spread across the urban landscape. With its ample space and prime spot, the New Yorker stepped up to provide quarters, chambers that lingered unoccupied amid the economic slump, now brimmed with Army and Navy personnel, who required rest while overseeing the enormous buildup of forces. Throughout the conflict, troops on furlough swarmed New York. The metropolis served as a launch pad for units bound for Europe and a haven for those coming back. Enlisted men with brief respites sought to savor the city's excitement prior to deployment. They sought budget-friendly stays near nightlife areas. The New Yorker welcomed these visitors, mingling them with the long-standing locals and corporate guests who routinely filled its halls. To cope with the wartime environment, the establishment modified its services. Supply limits on food altered the offerings in its eateries. Some staples grew hard to find. Cooks improvised with what's on hand and tweaked dishes to sidestep deficits. Patrons accepted it graciously. Sacrifices became the norm for all. The restaurant stayed in demand for offering dependable fare, despite the restrictions. A dinner there may have fallen short of peacetime extravagance, but it was dependable and expertly crafted. Labor gaps created tougher hurdles. Many young males from roles like porters, repair crews, and culinary teams signed up or got conscripted. Females stepped in to cover numerous jobs once reserved for males alone. The reception area started using women as attendants. Cleaning crews grew. While the phone board had long relied on female switchboard staff, they now assumed extra duties as their male overseers departed for duty. The structure itself assumed fresh roles. Its dedicated medical level, meant for aiding ill guests, boosted its services. Army physicians utilized the setup to check draftees and care for troops with slight health issues. Surgical areas buzzed with activity during those years, more than in any similar stretch of the hotel's past. The setup aided everyone involved. The armed forces secured handy health resources in Midtown Manhattan. The hotel earned fees for areas that had frequently gone unused. Vigilance ramped up across the property. Housing soldiers and dignitaries involved in sensitive data required tighter measures. Sentries scrutinized doorways more rigorously. Access to rooms got monitored more closely. Leaders grew warier of unchecked movement in the hallways. Though the edifice's scale had always defied total lockdown, the conflict sharpened focus on entry points. The on-site NBC facilities aired conflict updates and morale-boosting shows. Broadcasting emerged as a vital tool for bolstering spirits and relaying official announcements. Entertainers from before the war now contributed to airings that promoted savings bonds and recruitment drives. The spaces ran non-stop, crafting material heard by vast audiences, linking the New Yorker hotel to the sounds emanating from their sets. Money matters surged ahead. Room usage neared 90%. The place could demand premium prices, with seekers outpacing availability. Trade shows re-emerged as factories geared up for defense orders. Experts, producers, and officials sought venues in the city. The New Yorker's grand halls welcomed events unthinkable in the downturn. Earnings climbed to validate the initial building costs at last. Yet the war also delivered sorrow to the site, unrelated to battles. On July 28, 1945, a fog-shrouded B-25 bomber slammed into the Empire State Building, 14 blocks away. The crash claimed 14 lives and stunned the populace. Employees at the New Yorker gazed at the plume of smoke from the collision. The event drove home that, even in Manhattan distant from front lines, conflict posed risks. That morning's thick fog had reduced visibility so severely that the pilots couldn't spot structures until impact was unavoidable. The collision with the Empire State Building happened mere weeks prior to Japan's capitulation. Come August 1945, the conflict had concluded. The New Yorker hotel had navigated yet another ordeal. On this occasion, it came through in better shape than it started. Throughout the years, the structure had billeted military personnel, offered refuge to troops on furlough, and adjusted to the scarcities of wartime. It kept running smoothly even as rivals faltered. Above all, it had at last reached the room occupancy and income levels anticipated 15 years prior, back when building commenced. The early post-war era introduced shifts that initially appeared beneficial. Returning soldiers hunted for jobs in the civilian world. The hotel brought back laid-off employees and grew its teams to manage the persistent demand for rooms. Corporate gatherings picked up again, matching their pre-war volume. The economy surged ahead, with factories pivoting from defense output to consumer goods. Hotel accommodations stayed in high demand clear through 1946 and into 1947. Yet rivals were re-emerging too. The conflict had postponed new hotel builds. Developers now eyed ambitious ventures to boost Manhattan's supply of guest rooms. The New Yorker was showing its age. What felt cutting edge in 1930 was nearing 2 decades old. Its plumbing and wiring demanded modernization. The interior design felt outdated. Rivals would shortly unveil fresher properties boasting contemporary aesthetics. The longtime tenants on the higher levels, who had dwelled there amid the Great Depression and wartime, were growing frail. A few had called the New Yorker home for 15 years. In their later years, they needed extra care and support. The hotel kept housing them for the steady income they generated, though the demographic was tilting more toward pensioners than the blend of career folks and quirky personalities who first embraced hotel residency. The establishment's image was changing too, beyond management's influence. The New Yorker gained a notoriety for overlooking oddball inhabitants. It welcomed guests who settled bills in cash and prized seclusion. Staff inquired little about preferences for hotel quarters over traditional apartments. Such tact drew those seeking obscurity. Certain ones were benign oddities. Others harbored deeper motives for shunning standard residences. By 1948, the New Yorker Hotel had been in business for 18 years. It had endured the economic downturn, endured the global conflict, and solidified as a money-making venture. The edifice symbolized resilience in a sector rife with collapses. It had surpassed peers launching with comparable goals. It had flexed to fiscal storms that sank other businesses. The engineering backbone still operated. Chambers remained filled. Dining spots continued providing cuisine. However, the venue was no longer fresh. The breakthroughs that set it apart in 1930 had become commonplace by 1948. In-room radios were routine, not revolutionary. En-suite baths were the norm in up-to-date builds. On-demand chilled water was handy yet unexceptional. The property's edge had diminished as the field adopted the benchmarks it once led. Its fiscal setup stayed intricate. Repeated loan restructurings had spread stakes among lenders and backers. Operators reported to diverse stakeholders with clashing agendas. Certain parties pushed for quick profits. Others pushed spending on repairs and enhancements. These clashing views hampered steady strategic foresight. Choices emerged from group deliberations, leaving everyone somewhat dissatisfied. The hotel's prospects hinged on staying viable amid fresh builds injecting sleek options into Manhattan's lodging scene. The New Yorker held strengths, prime positioning, established dependability, and size, enabling it to cater to varied clientele at once. Still, such assets offered no certainties. The structure required funding to stay relevant. Neglected upkeep was starting to surface. Wall colors were dulling. Floor coverings were fraying. Equipment needed overhauls to align with fresh norms. Conditions were ripe for the ensuing phase, which would introduce the New Yorker Hotel's most iconic guest and secure its historical legacy for factors unrelated to its stature or breakthroughs. Nikola Tesla checked into the New Yorker Hotel in 1933. At 77, he was penniless and solitary. The pioneer who revolutionized power systems via alternating current research had devoted his later years to pitching ever more ambitious schemes that fizzled. Wireless energy delivery, seismic devices, destructive beams. Funders had ceased responding ages ago. His funds had dried up. He eked by on a modest stipend from ex-employer Westinghouse Electric, plus aid from a handful of loyal supporters. Previously, Tesla had resided at the Governor Clinton Hotel on West 31st Street. Yet accumulating unpaid debts compelled him to depart. Officials at the New Yorker Hotel consented to let him stay, even as he lacked the funds for regular pricing. The proprietors comprehended his predicament well. In his earlier years, Tesla had achieved widespread fame. Even now, he earned esteem from engineers and scientists who appreciated his pivotal role in shaping today's electrical infrastructure. This deal held benefits beyond mere kindness. The hotel gained cachet from sheltering a celebrated pioneer, one whose greatest accomplishments lay far in the past. Room 327, served as Tesla's last home. Positioned on the 33rd floor, it provided vistas over Midtown Manhattan from a lofty vantage, while remaining compact for extended stays. The space included just a bed, desk, chair, and compact bathroom. Tesla needed little else. For much of his adulthood, he had dwelled in hotels, favoring their straightforwardness over the hassles of a traditional home. Marriage had never appealed to him. He maintained no relatives in the United States. His belongings packed neatly into several trunks. The daily rate stood at $2.50. Tesla struggled to meet that consistently. Western Union Company, a past employer, shouldered a significant portion of his tab as retirement aid. The hotel tolerated postponed remittances and occasionally forgave piling arrears. Leaders figured that keeping Tesla there incurred fewer expenses than the backlash from ousting him. In his advanced years, he posed no threat. His sole issue remained the payment shortfall. Tesla settled into habits that seldom shifted. He rose at dawn, donned neat yet fading attire, and ventured out from the hotel on foot. He headed to the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue, a short distance away. Hours passed as he pored over periodicals and scholarly publications, jotting equations and concepts into notebooks that fate would leave unrealized. Library attendants knew him by sight. They granted him his favored spot without hassle. His standout habit centered on pigeons. Each day, Tesla nourished them in Bryant Park, the verdant area adjoining the library. He bought seed with funds that could have gone toward his own sustenance. Amid the flock, he extended his arms for them to perch, murmuring gently in Serbian. Bystanders viewing this aged figure swarmed by birds never suspected they beheld a titan of electrical innovation. Evenings brought him back to the New Yorker via the identical path from dawn. He dined frugally in his quarters, or, when money allowed, in the hotel's eateries. Bedtime came soon after. This cycle unfolded with scant deviation day after day. His existence had narrowed to a tight loop, linking the hotel, library, and park. Employees adapted to his quirks over time. Housekeepers entering his space encountered piles of journals brimming with formulas and sketches. They preserved it all untouched, aware that Tesla prized those documents most. With staff, he remained courteous yet aloof. Exchanges seldom strayed past simple politeness. He inhabited a private realm, dipping into reality only as demands arose. On January 8, 1943, a housekeeper rapped at room 3327's door that morning. Silence greeted her. The "Do Not Disturb" placard had dangled for 3 days. Standard rules urged honoring such requests, yet worry had mounted among the team. Tesla's age and weakness made 3 days of isolation atypical, even for his ways. She employed her passkey and swung the door wide. There lay Tesla on the bed, dressed completely, palms crossed over his torso. He had positioned himself with care prior to passing. The corpse aligned neatly, resembling a deliberate last scene. Order reigned in the chamber. Documents blanketed the desk in tidy arrays. The ledgers holding his ultimate endeavors rested exactly as placed. No disarray showed. She withdrew swiftly and alerted superiors at once. The on-site physician showed up promptly and verified the evident truth. Tesla had perished at least a day prior, perhaps more. Coronary thrombosis seemed the culprit. His heart had ceased without fanfare. At 86, he had reached his end. The New Yorker, summoned the coroner's team. Authorities came to inspect the remains and surroundings. Foul play showed no trace. Tesla had slipped away solo from age-related ills. The pathologist pegged the time around January 7th's late night or pre-dawn. That sign marked his ultimate outward signal. Personnel locked the space and anticipated directives on handling his effects. The chests and writings demanded cataloging. Arrangements for the remains fell to someone. The lingering hotel charges required resolution. Yet officials probed first. FBI agents reached the site by midday. 2 FBI agents showed up at the hotel, requesting entry to Tesla's suite and his documents. For years, they had kept tabs on him. His assertions regarding death rays and teleforce machines had placed him under surveillance all through the conflict. With his passing, officials were eager to determine whether any of those alleged creations were real. The agents devoted hours to combing through room 3327. They scrutinized each journal, stray sheet, and sketch. They snapped photos of files and compiled inventories of all discoveries. During the operation, Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovich, showed up and voiced strong objections. He contended that the documents were part of the family estate and that the Bureau lacked authority to take them. The agents paid no mind. National security priorities from the war era trumped standard ownership claims. In the end, the FBI carted off multiple trunks filled with items from the space. They asserted that the contents held details pertinent to defense interests. Kosanovich lodged complaints with the State Department, maintaining that his uncle's belongings were private assets, not classified intel. The conflict dragged on for an extended period. Right after Tesla's demise, the Bureau dominated oversight of all his writings from those last years. The Office of Alien Property stepped in as well. Though Tesla had become a U.S. citizen in 1891, his origins in Serbia muddied the waters. This office, tasked with handling assets from non-citizens amid wartime, asserted control over the inheritance. They seized more items from the hotel quarters, heightening the uncertainty over rightful possession. Officials at the New Yorker hotel were keen to vacate the space and reinstate it for use. A deceased patron was an inconvenience, but one whose possessions ignited federal probes posed a reputational risk. The establishment aided investigators completely, granting room access and fielding inquiries about Tesla's concluding period. Leaders stressed that he was aged, ailing, and had passed away calmly from age-related issues. Nothing scandalous occurred, just an aging figure concluding his existence. The memorial service occurred on January 12, 1943, at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in the Upper West Side, attracting a small gathering. Colleagues from engineering and science fields who valued Tesla's past achievements were present. A handful of representatives from firms that had hired him long ago appeared to honor him. The wider audience paid little heed. Publications printed short death notices, overshadowed by wartime headlines. Tesla's exit merited only a footnote on a once prominent figure whose peak had faded. Cremation followed for the remains. The cremains went into a gold orb and were first kept at a Queen's burial ground. Eventually, they moved to the Tesla Museum in Belgrade. For the moment, they rested in a container as attorneys debated documents and claims. Over at the New Yorker Hotel, room 3327, got a thorough cleaning and setup for fresh renters. Employees erased signs of Tesla's 13-year stay. The journals had vanished, claimed by state entities. His sparse personal effects were boxed up and handed to Kosanovich. Walls received new paint. Beds got crisp sheets. Bathroom fixtures sported new linens. Soon after, a newcomer settled into 3327, oblivious to the prior tenant's fate. The hotel returned to routine. Tesla's end caused no enduring stir. Turnover in rooms was routine. Visitors arrived and departed endlessly. An old inventor's quiet sleep death in a structure that had sheltered countless souls across more than a dozen years stood out little. Workers familiar with Tesla viewed him as courteous yet quirky, but far from unique. They'd encountered plenty of odd dwellers. He blended in as just another. Yet whispers started spreading right away. The Bureau's role fueled guesses. What reason could agents have for raiding a late inventor's lodging, if not for some hidden gem? Tales of the death ray bubbled up again. Folks who'd written off Tesla as a nut now pondered if he'd truly tinkered with real armaments. Official hush around the confiscated files only stoked interest. Conspiracy notions proliferated into 1943, and, further, certain voices alleged Tesla was assassinated to block rival spies from his breakthroughs. Some maintained the American regime had pilfered his ray schematics for covert armament projects. A smattering suggested he'd beamed his key insights mentally prior to dying, safeguarding the lore despite any document loss. No proof backed these ideas. They endured regardless. Reality proved far tamer. The Bureau pored over Tesla's files meticulously and uncovered zero defense-worthy elements. The journals held musings, abstract math, and concepts confined to the page. No functional models turned up. Investigators turned up no precise schematics for operable armaments. In his last years, Tesla had devoted himself to conceptualizing gadgets he could no longer assemble due to a lack of funds or means. In 1952, officials unobtrusively handed back the bulk of the confiscated documents to his heirs. Those files had always lacked any confidential details deserving of safeguards. Tesla's demise granted the New Yorker hotel a slice of legacy it hadn't earned from its former splendor or pioneering features. The structure would linger in recollection as the spot where a key pioneer in electrical engineering perished in isolation within a modest chamber on the 33rd floor. The paradox cut deep. Tesla had transformed energy distribution and contributed to the power network that energized countless residences and enterprises. Yet he concluded his days unable to cover his electricity costs. Relying on the benevolence of a lodging that put up with him to avoid the scandal of ousting him, room 3327 kept accommodating visitors oblivious to its prior tenant. The establishment refrained from promoting its tie to Tesla. Executives perceived little promotional benefit in highlighting that a renowned innovator had expired there. The tale circulated regardless via casual chatter and sporadic press pieces. Across the years, the space developed a mystique for Tesla enthusiasts who journeyed to the New Yorker, seeking access to the scene of his passing. The hotel matured in parallel with its most notable past inhabitant. By the mid-1940s, the New Yorker had reached 15 years of age. The surge from wartime was fading. Rivalry from fresher establishments was growing fiercer. What appeared cutting edge in 1930 now seemed outdated against post-war builds. Engineering setups demanded overhauls. Furnishings called for refreshes. The breakthroughs that set the New Yorker apart at launch had become routine offerings at every inn. Tesla's passing signaled the close of a chapter for the edifice. It had offered refuge to a luminary in his waning days. It had extended haven when others turned away. That link would outlast all other facets of the building's chronicle. Long after the New Yorker ceased functioning as a traditional inn, it would persist in public memory as the venue of Nikola Tesla's death. Following Tesla's exit, the New Yorker hotel embarked on an extended downturn. The years right after the war appeared hopeful at first, yet the drive waned. By 1950, signs of wear were evident in the structure. The engineering apparatuses that wowed guests in 1930 malfunctioned more often. The unified chilled water setup needed endless repairs. Conduits rusted, mechanisms deteriorated. The cooling facility guzzled vast quantities of power to provide a convenience that patrons now viewed as ordinary. Rivalry escalated across the 1950s. Fresh lodgings debuted throughout Manhattan, boasting up-to-date comforts and stylish designs. The Americana debuted in 1962, featuring 2,000 rooms and aesthetics aligned with prevailing preferences. The New York Hilton came next in 1963, with more than 2,100 rooms and assembly spaces that outshone the New Yorker's capabilities. Such venues included full climate control, beyond mere air circulation. They offered on-site lots for vehicles. They featured dining spots crafted by famed culinary artists. They embodied the expectations of 1960s visitors. The New Yorker couldn't rival them in freshness. At over 30 years old, the property would need substantial funding for renovations to align with rivals, a cost the proprietors either couldn't or wouldn't shoulder. The ownership setup stayed tangled. Repeated loan restructurings had spread authority among lenders, with conflicting aims. Certain parties aimed to squeeze out profits with scant spending. Others pushed to offload the site to builders potentially raising it for fresh developments. No agreement surfaced regarding the edifice's path forward. Room bookings fell progressively during the 1950s. The gatherings trade that propped up the hotel amid the economic slump and conflict shifted to modern venues. Corporate visitors opted for spots with superior spots or sleeker setups. The long-term dwellers who filled higher levels for years were passing on. Emerging career folks showed no appeal for residents in hotels when budget-friendly flats abounded citywide. The surrounding area evolved too. 8th Avenue had never ranked as Manhattan's elite thoroughfare. Into the 1960s, the district was declining. The apparel zone stayed bustling weekdays, but sidewalks cleared at nightfall. Criminal activity rose. Street solicitation grew apparent near the premises. Sightseers en route from Penn Station to uptown shows traversed segments that seemed hazardous post-dusk. The New Yorker responded by easing quality and pricing. The venue started welcoming patrons unable to secure finer options. Chambers that formerly welcomed politicians and stars now harbored short-term renters settling weekly fees. Administrators started inquiring less about guests' IDs and how they planned to pay. The hotel's vast scale enabled it to cater to various segments at the same time. Corporate gatherings continued to book the ballrooms from time to time. Downstairs eateries stayed open, yet the higher levels were filling up more and more with folks that upscale places would turn away. Cutbacks in personnel persisted into the 1960s. During wartime, the New Yorker had a staff of hundreds. Come 1965, only a bare-bones team was left, just enough to keep things running at a basic level. Cleaning routines slackened, with rooms getting attention less often. Fixes were put off until machinery broke down entirely. Signs of disrepair started appearing on the structure. Hallway walls lost their paint in flakes. Rugs frayed and thinned out. Bulbs in lights weren't swapped out. What was once a symbol of U.S. drive and innovation now illustrated the fallout from years of skimped upkeep. Then, in 1967, money troubles hit hard. The establishment sought bankruptcy safeguards. Lenders pushed through a forced auction. It sold for $12.5 million, a mere sliver of the inflation-adjusted build price back in the day. Fresh proprietors vowed upgrades and fresh funding, but those pledges never came to pass. The insolvency deal merely shifted the asset to new debt holders, facing identical pressures to cut expenses and squeeze out any leftover income. The 1970s ushered in decay that felt like the end. Whole levels stood deserted. The plumbing and heating broke down way more than they worked. That famous chilled water from the faucets, once a wonder, now sputtered out rusty sludge, if it flowed at all. Winters brought unreliable warmth. Visitors griped non-stop about chilly spaces and busted amenities. The front desk offered sorries and cut-rate deals, but nothing close to real fixes. Reports of crime rose within the premises. The place had long drawn those wanting to stay under the radar, but lately it pulled in fugitives dodging cops or bills. Narcotics trades popped up in the stairs. Sex work ran out of short-term room rentals. Security was practically non-existent. The lingering workers, mostly veterans who'd toiled there for years, didn't have the vigor or clout to uphold policies that bosses had stopped bothering with. A handful of killings took place in the early 1970s. In 1972, a visitor turned up lifeless in his quarters, slain in a heist gone wrong. Another fatality in 1974 looked like self-harm, though cops smelled something suspicious. The events drew press scrutiny, tarnishing the hotel's image even further. Reporters painted the New Yorker as a faded palace turned haven for outlaws and folks at the end of their rope. Advocates for historic sites argued over saving it. As one of the era's tallest hotels before the Depression, it held design value. Ralph Walker's Art Deco facade still impressed amid the rotting insides. Yet saving it meant pouring in cash. Millions were needed for updates to code and modern use. Nobody was eager to sink funds into a spot in a fading district with a sullied name. Tear-down talks gained traction for the first real time in 1975. The proprietors weighed if the lot was more valuable, cleared out than as a sinking ship of a stay. Builders eyed it for condos or commercial high-rises. Ties to Tesla surfaced now and then, but they didn't carry enough weight to warrant rescue. Most locals had lost track that he'd passed away there. Those in the know figured it wasn't justification to prop up a site that shamed the city. Through 1975 and into 1976's start, the New Yorker lingered largely vacant. Under 200 of its 2,531 rooms saw steady use. Dining spots shut down, event halls gathered dust. Street-level stores, once drawing high-end renters, now peddled bargains or sat idle. Income trickled in, just to pay for power and a handful of keepers. Another bankruptcy loomed. Wrecking crews seemed on deck. But in May 1976, an unforeseen twist arrived. The Unification Church bid to buy it up. Under Reverend Sun Myung Moon, the group was growing its U.S. footprint and sought space for followers and gatherings. The New Yorker fit the bill perfectly. Huge scale, prime spot, and a bargain price born of distress, not demand. The deal, wrapped in July 1976 at $5.6 million. Hardly half the sum the last bankrupt holders shelled out nearly a decade prior. The Unification Church snagged a 43-floor behemoth with more than 2,000 rooms right in Midtown Manhattan for the price of raising a modest condo complex. The purchase appeared unlikely, but it made sense because the property had no other takers. Right after acquiring it, the Unification Church launched extensive renovations. The structure demanded enormous repairs. Outdated electrical wiring had to be modernized to comply with modern regulations. Pipes running through the entire edifice were deteriorating. The heating setup was practically useless. Long-term neglect had piled up issues that would demand years and vast sums to fix. Unlike prior owners, the church poured in the necessary funds. Instead of a total overhaul, they opted for targeted updates suited to their priorities, without bringing every space back to its original luxury hotel state. The top levels got turned into simple dormitory accommodations for church followers. These areas were pared down to essentials: just beds, sparse furnishings, and communal bathrooms per level. This setup enabled the church to shelter hundreds of members in a venue that would have been unaffordable to run as a high-end hotel. Meanwhile, the ground-level sections kept their hospitality role. The church ran the New Yorker as an active hotel to bring in income and host attendees of their events. Accommodations on levels 2 to 15 got refreshed to a decent level. Fresh carpeting went in. Restrooms saw upgrades. The infrastructure supporting these areas took top priority. In the end, it created a versatile complex, part lodging, part barracks, part gathering spot. The ballrooms and conference halls underwent full restoration. The church hosted big meetings and assemblies that needed spacious facilities. The main ballroom could fit thousands for occasions. Compact rooms handled classes and seminars. These areas got substantial funding since they were key to the group's goals. Public zones for activities fared better than the sleeping quarters upstairs. On the outside, cleaning and fixes revived the look. City soot from decades had dulled the Art Deco front by Ralph Walker. Teams dedicated months to scrubbing the brick and terracotta, uncovering hues buried under grime buildup. Broken decorative elements were mended or swapped out. Suddenly, the place started resembling a treasure worth saving, not tearing down. The whole revamp spanned multiple years. Come 1980, the New Yorker Hotel was back in action as a multifaceted hub juggling various roles at once. Devotees resided above. Revenue-generating visitors filled the rooms below. Meetings animated the common areas. What once looked headed for the wrecking ball now hummed near full tilt under an operating style, unforeseen when built half a century prior. Interest in the Tesla link surged anew then. Tech experts and admirers started visiting room 3327 like a shrine. Spotting the draw, the church highlighted it in marketing. They didn't turn room 3327 into an exhibit or memorial, yet they permitted tours for curious folks with prior notice. It stayed as a plain guest suite, nothing special beyond its past. Rumors about Tesla's passing and the FBI's grab of his documents kept swirling. The church's control of the site fueled fresh speculation. A few alleged the Unification Church bought the New Yorker, on purpose, to guard hidden Tesla enigmas in room 3327. Some even said they were running tests drawn from his ideas. These stories lacked any truth, yet they lingered in writings from those sure Tesla's end hid big secrets. In 1982, the hotel earned landmark protection. The New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission recognized the New Yorker for its design merits and historical value, shielding it officially. This barred wrecking or major outside changes without their okay. Inside, though, no rules applied, so the church could keep adapting rooms for their uses. The surrounding district perked up in the 1980s. Efforts to spruce up Times Square pushed southward into the garment zone. Street crime fell, real estate prices climbed. The New Yorker's spot, a drawback before, turned advantageous amid the booming Midtown revival. The church now held a prime property in a hot locale. Through ups and downs in the economy that might have sunk it otherwise, the hotel kept going. The church's setup differed from typical hotel chains. They didn't chase peak earnings from it. Just covering costs worked if it advanced their larger aims. That lighter money strain helped the New Yorker weather low occupancy spells when standard inns faltered. Operating as both a hotel and a dormitory fostered a distinctive vibe. Visitors on the lower levels often crossed paths with churchgoers in the common areas and lifts. Interactions were mostly harmonious, though sometimes uncomfortable. Business travelers arriving for work trips might ride up with groups of uniformed youth bound for the upper-level residences. While the church tried to keep spaces distinct, the structure's design made total isolation impossible. Feedback from stays during that era varied widely. Patrons valued the affordable prices and prime spot in the city. However, they griped about outdated furnishings and spotty staff performance. Accommodations stayed tidy, yet simple. Facilities fell short of what upscale chains provided. Those seeking value on a tight budget deemed the New Yorker suitable. But visitors, hoping for the polish of fresh properties, felt let down. It catered to a thrifty crowd that ensured reliable bookings without pushing for endless improvements. Engineering issues in the structure persisted, even after upgrades. By the 1990s, the central ice water setup was scrapped at last. What was once an engineering wonder proved too costly to upkeep for a perk that no longer wowed anyone. Lines got sealed off, fixtures and fixtures yanked out. Thus, Basic costs doomed the hotel's signature tech feat. Tesla's legacy expanded through the 1990s and into the 2000s. Fresh books cast him as an overlooked visionary, his work eclipsed by Edison and peers. In media and entertainment, he emerged as a poignant icon, broke at life's end after transforming power systems. This revival boosted the New Yorker. Tourists increasingly asked about Suite 3327. The church started casual guided walks featuring the spot of Tesla's last days. The place drew folks eager to lodge there for its past. Not your average sightseers, but rather admirers of Tesla, design buffs, and those drawn to its quirky stewardship. Spotting this specialty appeal, the church highlighted heritage in ads. Brochures touted Tesla, the Art Deco flair, and its landmark designation. The events of September 11, 2001, introduced fresh hurdles. The assaults crippled visitor traffic in Manhattan. Citywide, lodgings watched reservations plummet. The New Yorker held on thanks to its mixed-use setup for resilience. Devotees kept filling dorm spaces, unaffected by travel dips. The lodging portion faltered yet endured, as it was just one piece of the overall operation. Rebound dragged on for years. Footfall slowly rebounded in the borough. The New Yorker's fill rates climbed. Into the mid-2000s, it was back to modest gains by church measures. Expenses got met, religious roles fulfilled, and a small extra income flowed. Such results pleased proprietors in a way profit-hungry chains could never grasp. The 2008 financial crash challenged the approach once more. Reservations fell, island-wide. The New Yorker rode out the slump via the safeguards that shielded it, post-9/11. Its faith-based control and tolerance for slimmer margins enabled endurance where for-profit rivals risked collapse. Once seeking shelter in 1967 bankruptcy, it now outlasted plenty of recent rivals in fiscal health. By the 2010s, the spot earned a name as a cheap stay in a pricey metropolis. Rates undercut similar midtown spots by a lot. In exchange, interiors felt old, perks sparse. Savvy bargain hunters saw the worth. Modernist hopefuls walked away unsatisfied. Digital comments captured the split. Penny pinchers lauded costs and position. High-end chasers bashed it all. Suite 3327 kept drawing curiosity. The church permitted targeted bookings there. Some occupants learned of its lore, only at departure, via employee nods to Tesla. The space held no extras, just routine setup with bedding, workspace, screen, and facilities. Its draw lay wholly in events from 70 years prior. In the 2020s, the New Yorker runs akin to its post-1980s church revamp mode. As a versatile hub juggling roles, it weathers market storms that sink standard inns. The 1930 opener, once the planet's highest hotel, persists not via splendor, but flexibility. The structure weathered the Great Depression by taking in permanent guests. It made it through World War II by accommodating service members. It navigated the 1960s and 1970s by cutting back on quality and prices. After 1976, it persisted by evolving beyond a traditional lodging space. The twist is undeniable. Constructed to symbolize U.S. drive in the prosperous era preceding the crash, the New Yorker debuted at the most inopportune time and fell short of the triumphs its creators envisioned. Its renown stemmed largely from the solitary, impoverished passing of an aging innovator within its walls. Demolition was sidestepped when a faith-based group acquired it, appreciating its worth for purposes far removed from hospitality. The edifice endures not due to any triumphs, but through clever adaptations to repeated setbacks. Tesla would have grasped this well. He passed his last days in room 3327, persisting in much the same manner.